The first time I realized a single photo could destroy a life, it wasn't in a courtroom or on the news. It was on an ordinary Tuesday morning, in an office where the air always smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. My phone buzzed once on my desk, quiet and innocent, and in that 1 second everything I had spent years building began to collapse, because the message was from my CEO, and the photo he accidentally sent wasn't just a mistake, it was a weapon. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and do something powerful. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and treating people like they matter, please like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. You never know whose life your support could reach. My name is Grace Whitaker, and I was 29 years old when I learned what it feels like to be disposable. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, in a small apartment that creaked in winter and overheated in summer. I didn't have fancy furniture, but I had order. I had lists. I had routines. I had the kind of life that doesn't look impressive online but holds itself together through sheer discipline. Every morning, I woke up at 5:20, packed my lunch, ironed my blouse, and made sure my shoes were clean enough to reflect light. Not because I cared about appearances for vanity, but because I knew the world treated you differently when you looked like you belonged. I worked at a fast-growing tech company called Alder Ridge Systems, a place that liked to call itself a family while quietly chewing people up and spitting them out. The office was modern and bright, full of glass walls and motivational posters that said things like "dream big and hustle harder." But behind the clean design was a culture built on fear. People didn't talk about layoffs. They whispered about them. People didn't ask for raises. They prayed for survival. And at the top of it all was my CEO, Nathan Caldwell. Nathan was the kind of man magazines loved. Tall, polished, sharp jaw, perfect suits. He spoke in confident phrases, like he'd been trained by a team of consultants to sound like the future. People described him as visionary and intense, but the truth was simpler. He was powerful, and he knew it. He didn't just lead the company. He owned the room everywhere he went, like oxygen was reserved for him first. I wasn't important in that world. I was an executive assistant. I organized his calendar, booked flights, handled meetings, smoothed over crises before they reached him. I was the quiet engine behind his public shine. The kind of employee CEOs forget is human. Still, I worked harder than anyone I knew, because I had to. My father, Robert Whitaker, had been a factory worker until an injury ruined his back. My mother, Marlene, worked part-time at a church daycare. We were not a family with connections. We were a family with faith, and bills and prayers whispered over cheap dinner plates. When I got hired at Alder Ridge, my parents cried like I'd won a medal. And in a way, I had escaped. Or at least I thought I had. That Tuesday started like any other. My inbox was already full by 7:12 a.m. My boss had back-to-back meetings. Investors were coming in from New York. There was tension everywhere, the kind you could feel in the way people walked faster than usual, the way they avoided eye contact like it could become an assignment. At 9:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Nathan. At first, I felt a flicker of pride. CEOs don't text assistants unless it's urgent, unless they trust you. I picked up my phone, ready to respond quickly, professionally, like I always did. Then I opened it. It was a photo. Nathan standing on a balcony somewhere luxurious, ocean behind him, sky clean and expensive looking. His arm was around a woman in a silk dress, her hair styled perfectly, her smile bright enough to belong in an advertisement. And in the foreground, right across the bottom of the image, was text. See what you could have had. For a moment, I didn't breathe. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like my body forgot how to hold itself up. I stared at the photo like it might rearrange itself into something less humiliating, like maybe it was meant for someone else, like maybe it wasn't what it clearly was. Because I knew that woman. Her name was Madison Pierce, a new brand consultant the company had brought in months earlier. She walked through the office like she was already famous. She laughed too loud, wore heels too high, and always found reasons to visit Nathan's floor. People talked about her in private, but no one dared say anything openly. Madison had the kind of confidence money gives you, the confidence of knowing consequences are for other people. And Nathan was the kind of man who didn't just enjoy power, he collected it. I didn't reply right away. My fingers hovered over the screen. My mind ran through possible explanations. Maybe he meant it as a joke. Maybe it was an inside thing I didn't understand. Maybe he'd meant to send it to Madison herself, teasing her, and somehow it came to me. But that text wasn't a mistake. It felt personal. Because only Nathan and I knew the truth I'd kept buried for 2 years. 2 years ago, on a cold night after a company gala, Nathan had offered to drive me home. I was exhausted, my feet blistered, my smile worn thin from hours of pretending to be fine. He had been unusually quiet in the car, and when we reached my apartment building, he didn't leave right away. He told me I was different. He said he admired my loyalty. He said he could change my life. I told him I wasn't that kind of woman. I told him I had principles. I told him no. His face had changed instantly, like warmth switching off. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just smiled slowly, like someone watching a door close in front of them, already planning how to open it another way. After that, my workload doubled. Mistakes I didn't make appeared in reports. Meetings got forgotten. I was blamed for small problems that weren't mine. But I survived because I had no choice. And now, years later, here was proof that he remembered, that he had never forgiven me for refusing to be owned. The humiliation hit me first, like heat rising to my face. Then came anger, pure, shaking anger. Then came something worse, the fear that he had meant to send this, that he wanted me to know exactly where I stood. And then, before I could talk myself out of it, I replied. I didn't curse him. I didn't insult him. I didn't beg. I wrote one sentence, steady as a heartbeat. Looks like I didn't miss out. I escaped. The second I hit send, my hands started trembling. Not because I regretted what I said, but because I knew what it would cost. The rest of the day moved like a slow disaster. At 10:30, Nathan walked past my desk without looking at me. At 11, the HR director, Valerie Simmons, emailed me asking for a brief meeting. At 11:12, my calendar access was revoked. At 11:15, my company email logged me out. By noon, I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room, facing Valerie and a legal representative I'd never seen before, a man named Curtis Hale who didn't smile once. They didn't mention the photo. They didn't mention Nathan. They said I had shown unprofessional conduct and insubordination. They said there were ongoing performance concerns. They slid papers across the table like my entire life was a transaction. I tried to speak, but my voice felt trapped in my throat. I tried to explain that I had never been written up, never warned, never given a chance to correct anything. Valerie's eyes stayed cold, as if she'd rehearsed this moment. Curtis told me I could sign the severance agreement or leave with nothing. I walked out with a cardboard box and a shame that didn't belong to me. Outside the building, the wind was sharp. The sky was too blue for something so cruel. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel until my vision blurred. I wasn't just fired. I was erased. My badge, my access, my identity in that place, gone in minutes. And the worst part was knowing why. I went home and cried until my chest hurt. Then I cried again, quieter this time, the kind of crying that feels like drowning silently. My parents called and I lied at first, telling them I'd left the job. But my mother always knew when my voice wasn't real. She prayed over the phone, and her faith made me cry even harder. Days passed, then weeks. I applied everywhere. I updated my resume until it looked like a stranger wrote it. I went to interviews where people smiled politely and never called back. Columbus felt smaller every day, like the city itself was closing in. One afternoon, when my rent was due and my savings had nearly evaporated, I sat at my kitchen table staring at that message again. Nathan's photo. That cruel sentence, my reply. and something inside me snapped, not into violence, but into clarity. I realized the only reason I was ashamed was because I had been trained to be. So I did something terrifying. I emailed myself the screenshot. I gathered every record I had, old performance reviews praising my work, emails proving I had handled tasks correctly, calendar logs showing the workload. I wrote everything down, every detail I could remember. Then I reached out to an employment lawyer I found through a women's advocacy group at a local church. Her name was Veronica James, and she had eyes that didn't flinch. When she saw the photo, she went silent for a long time. Then she said, "Grace, this isn't just wrongful termination. This is retaliation. And you're not the first woman he's done this to." That sentence changed my life, because I wasn't alone. Veronica helped me file a formal complaint. Quietly, carefully. We didn't post online. We didn't go public yet. We did it the right way. And as the investigation began, something unbelievable happened. Other women came forward, a former marketing coordinator named Hannah, a finance analyst named Claire, even someone from a different branch in Chicago, a woman named Rebecca, who said she'd been demoted after rejecting Nathan's attention. Their stories were different, but the pattern was the same: charm, pressure, punishment. Nathan had built an empire, but he'd also built a trap. The company tried to bury it at first. They offered me money to stay quiet. They hinted I'd never work again if I kept pushing. But by then, I wasn't the scared assistant anymore. I was a woman who had already lost everything, and discovered that losing everything can make you fearless. The investigation took months. There were meetings, statements, documents, sleepless nights. Some days I wanted to quit. Some days I shook so badly I couldn't hold a pen. But my mother kept praying. My father kept reminding me that truth was worth fighting for, and Veronica kept telling me, "You're doing this for the Grace you used to be." Then one morning, my phone buzzed again. A news alert. Alder Ridge Systems CEO Nathan Caldwell steps down amid misconduct investigation. I stared at the screen, not feeling joy at first. Just a deep, exhausted relief, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. The company offered a settlement, not just money but an official correction of my termination record. They offered a letter of recommendation. They offered to cover legal fees. They offered to implement new protections. But the biggest victory wasn't any of that. It was the fact that Nathan Caldwell couldn't silence women anymore. A year later, I wasn't an assistant. I was the operations manager at a nonprofit that helped women re-enter the workforce after harassment or discrimination. I stood in front of rooms full of women who had been told they were too much or not enough, and I told them the truth. You are not disposable. Your dignity is not a privilege, and power does not belong to the people who abuse it. It belongs to the people who survive it. Near the end of every workshop, I show them a quote I keep in my notebook. It's the sentence I sent Nathan that day. I escaped, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be bought. If this story touched your heart even a little, please don't just scroll away. Like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs strength right now. Your support tells YouTube to push stories like this to people who are hurting and feel alone.